Am I on? Yeah, okay. I don't think the bell's rang just yet, but while we're waiting, we'll go ahead and get a counter of daily Bible readers. And does anybody need a quarterly? Barry's coming right now if you need one. And before we start, Josh, would you care to lead us in a prayer, please?
Most gracious and loving Heavenly Father, we're so thankful unto you for your day that you blessed us with for this opportunity that we've had to gather together as brothers and sisters of Christ as we sing songs of praise and study another lesson from the Lord. We're thankful now, dear Father, for this period of Bible study that we're able to participate in. We pray that you can help us to focus our minds of things of spiritual nature and to put out the things of the world so that we can focus intently upon your word. Be with all the classes downstairs, dear Father, and be with those that are taking in the lessons, and we pray that each one of us might gain something from it, apply it to our daily lives, and be better Christians in thy sight. This we humbly pray in your Son, Jesus' name.
Amen. There's the bell. Part of my lesson was actually taught today by Mr. Edward, and then some of it was talked about by Johnny last week. So if it's a repeat, at least you're getting it 2 or 3 times. Before I start the actual lesson, I want to ask a couple of questions that I'll incorporate later on. So how many, and you don't have to raise your hand, but just think about it in your head, how many of us in here have learned something from our parents or our grandparents? We didn't necessarily read it in a book, or we didn't YouTube it or Google it. You know, we just watched and learned. Can you think of a time something like that? Like I said, it could be your parents or your grandparents. And how many times have we done something and we knew it was wrong and we knew not to do it, but we went ahead and did it anyway? And I'll give you a couple examples on my part. When I'm riding motorcycles, if I'm headed towards the interstate up by Gordonsville, close to the Shell station, I know, without a doubt, there is a little hole in the road about yay big. And I know it's on the right-hand side, close to that white line. But almost every time I'm riding motorcycles, I'm usually with a group, 3 or 4 of us, and I always end up on the right-hand side, how we stagger. And I know that hole is there. And I know if I hit that hole, it's going to shake my front wheel, or it's going to jar my tailbone or my back or something pretty hard. And you'll feel it in a car, but it's a little different on a motorcycle. Now, I justify myself hitting that a lot of times because I'm watching the traffic coming from the left side that's pulling out in front of me, or the traffic that's pulling out from the gas station, or the traffic that's going to hit the interstate and cut me off in front of it, because that happens a lot on a motorcycle. But even though I find these justifications, in the end, I know it's there, and I know not to do it, but I still hit it anyway. And another example, I know it was this morning, matter of fact, that's the reason why I'm going to tell you. I've been lazy all week. I hate shaving. And I know if I go 3 or 4 days, my upper lip, whenever I shave it off, it hurts. I mean, it just pulls and tugs, and it doesn't matter if it's a new razor blade or not, it just hurts. So that's all on me. I know better, and I do it anyway. So try to, if you can think of something, an example in your own life of how you know something's wrong, but you just kind of justify it, that's part of what we're going to be talking about here in just a little while. So if you're reading the text in the book, and I'm notorious to read that because I kill time to basically make sure I get my points across, and I'm nervous when I'm up here. But Johnny mentioned it last week, and I'm going to mention it again. So the Israelites, they were led by Moses. He was not the king, but he was the Lord's servant. He's the one that done everything and kept everybody wrangled in and falling in the right direction. And hang on just a second. I'm sorry. So whenever he is at the end of his life, and it says he hands the reins over to Joshua. Okay, so Joshua is now in charge. He's the servant. He's the one keeping everybody reined in, going in the right direction, doing what we're supposed to do. All right, so now it tells us that Joshua lived to be 110 years. And it was 10 years short of Moses. So if my math's right, that should be 120 years. So if we got 120, is that not right, Mia? You shook your head. Oh, okay. I thought maybe I said something wrong. Tell me if I do. I don't want to tell nothing wrong. So we got 230 years. Okay, I said 220, didn't I? All right, but anyway, 230. Now, if you think about 230 years, that's quite a few years. I mean, nobody lives to be 230 anymore. So, and then it mentions that it talks about the elders. So Joshua didn't hand the reins over. He didn't look and say, "Hey Johnny," or "Hey Marcus," or "Hey Simon," anybody, you're in charge now for me. You know, it was just the elders who's leading by example. It's kind of the same way we do here at Now. We learn and lead by example. And so everything was good. But after a while, it started changing. And so in my mind, I have to associate things and put them in perspective. So we've got 230, and then the elders are keeping things in line. So I'm thinking to myself, all right, let's 230, 20 years is 250, so somewhere between 250 and say, and it's my opinion, 300 years. You know, we've got good examples set. So I'm going to use 300 just for simple math because I have a simple mind. If you're thinking about today is 2019 and we subtract 300 years from that, that's 1719. Now, that's going way back, and what we know of that is probably not from a parent or grandparent or even a great-grandparent that lived that long. You know, maybe you have one, but in my head I was thinking, okay, if somebody in here was born in 1920 and their grandparent lived to be 100 years old, that's 1820. And if that grandparent of this person was 20 years old whenever the grandparent was born, the great-grandparent was only 20 years older. So we're still way short of 300. So it's kind of hard if you don't read it, and especially accounts of things wasn't, well, a lot of times wasn't even printed. You know, I mean, we're just shortly past the days of kings and knights and the fables of King Arthur and stuff like that, you know. So it's hard to imagine without reading it what it really was like. You know, you can think, but if you hadn't seen the scars on knuckles or like some of the heroes that's come back from defending our country, you know, the stab wounds or the burns or the loss of limbs, it's hard to really truly get that real picture of what it was really like. And yes, sir.
Never have paid that much attention to it, but it says, "And all the days of the elders who outlived Joshua, who had seen all the great works of the Lord." So really, it's not that long at all, because they had lived not during the first part of Joshua's life, but at least during the last part of Joshua's life. And this brings up a really good point, which my son taught me. I am ignorant of history, didn't really see any need for history. Why do we have history? What's the importance of history? And my son taught me, he said, "Dad, if you don't know the truth, people will rewrite it to serve their own purpose." That's why it's very important for historians to be exact in what they say and tell, because going along with what Edward said this morning, there are people who actually are trying to teach that the Holocaust didn't happen. Well, we still have people living that were in those concentration camps, and yet there are people who are saying that it didn't happen. And that goes back to Satan in his lies. Once he starts a lie, how many people actually have to believe it before it becomes the truth? And that's the danger with people not writing down exactly what happened and then telling people over and over. Because what happened here, people just forget about the Lord. They forget about how they came into the land of Canaan. They forget about what Joshua and all the people did. And then pretty soon, they're following their own lusts and desires, and they're gone.
Right, and that's, you taught half my lesson again, so that's where I was going with this. Thank you. I mean, that's where I was going with this, is because we don't have that exact document, and we haven't lived it or haven't truly seen it, or have somebody that's close to us that can, because there's a big difference in my mind whenever my wife sends me a text versus whenever I hear her say something to me with the emotion that could be in the words themselves. And it's like Barry said, they went away, the Israelites went away from following, and because they haven't seen the examples, like where the waters were parted, or how the manna and the fish fed everybody, or even this fortress that's impenetrable, the walls of Jericho, how, you know, march around, blow the horn, and there they went. You know, and I'm just very briefly hitting on things that happened. You know, so whenever they haven't seen all these miracles and all these works of the Lord showing His power and His authority, they start worshiping other gods. And I'll say this as best I can, the Baals. And whenever I look the Baals up, I have a companion book. It tells me one thing, and when I look definition-wise, it says the definitions on Google showed that there were 7, and they were basically the prince of the devil, and they were for, let me see here, I've got it wrote down. They were for the rain, and what it was there was, and I think Johnny explained this, and he said a lot better with the names, but all these surrounding communities, the community is not the right word, but they all have kings, and they are all serving these other deities, and they see the prosperous, and they think, okay, instead of having one, they've got multiple gods. So we've got the one God, but the more we have, the better off we are, which is not true. And then Ashtoreths, I don't know if I said that right or not. They were the females, and looking on definition I found on Google and stuff said that they were females, and they were for sexuality. And then in the book here it says that they were the land. So you've got the surrounding kingdoms, and they've got prosperous. They've got green grass. They've got rain falling. They're able to keep their livestock up and feed everybody and grow. And then the Israelites were thinking, well, if that's what they've got, well, that's what we need to do. And the more we've got, the better off we are, which causes just complete chaos. So when the Lord sees this, I mean, this angers Him. And basically He says, all right, you got it. You're on your own for a while. And they're plundered. They're taken advantage of. They're raided. And they drop to their knees. And, well, I say that. That's my explanation. But they're praying for forgiveness. They're like, oh, we're sorry. We won't do this no more. Please help us. So God, the forgiving God and the loving God, He sends a judge. They get everything back on track. And as soon as everything's back on track, what do? They go back to the old ways. It's kind of like, I was telling Mia when I was trying to go over this with her a little bit to make sure what I'm saying made sense. It's kind of like a racetrack or a circle. A circle is kind of an infinity. It doesn't stop. But if you've ever seen, watched, or heard of a NASCAR race, it's on a circular oval track. And there's a starting point, and that same point is going to be the finish line where you stop at. Now, In between, there's, of course, however many laps you have to make. But it's kind of the same pattern. They've started here on the side of the Lord. They started right here. So over time, we're going, we get away, we're so sorry, we get back on track, and we're right here at the starting point again. And then we start saying, well, maybe we can do this. Maybe we can do this, which is not right. So we're repeating the cycle again of saying, oh, we're in the wrong. Oh, all this bad stuff's happening to us. We're sorry. Please forgive us. So here comes another judge. Gets everybody back in track. And then we get to the start line, finish line again, and it's the same pattern. So let me see here where it says, I couldn't find this in the scriptures that was the Judges 2, chapter 2, 7 through 19, but in the companion book that comes along with this, it says that God listened to the pleas of men and women who turned their back on him. 70 times 7, he sent them saviors or deliverers. So when I heard that, I thought, there's another part in the Bible too. It says 70 times 7. I can't remember the exact phrasing. I'm paraphrasing. But if your enemy slaps you, turn the other cheek. And I was asked, how many times do I turn the cheek? Well, it's 7 times 70. So I thought, in my mind, that's a good comparison, because if the Lord can forgive us that many times, later on he's telling you, if I can forgive you, you should be able to forgive each other just as easily as I forgive you. Because he made and he can take away. So why are we any better to not return the favor to our fellow man? And is this making sense? I guess anybody, are you? Okay, because I told Jeremy, this is the hardest lesson I've tried to come up with and to work on and to do. Throughout Judges, the people of Israel struggled with leadership. And it talks about in here, it talks about Samuel and my companion. After the exploits of Gideon, someone wanted to make him king, but he refused to offer, and that's in Judges 8:23. Some were determined that for Israel to appoint a king to lead them into battle was an invitation for disaster, and that's in 1 Samuel 8:10 through 18. Judges ends with 2 stories interspersed with the phrase, in those days there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. And that's in 17:6, 19:1, 21 verse 25. Eventually the Israelites turned their back on God in order to have a king. And that's 1 Samuel 8:7. And be like the nations around them. So, figuratively speaking, the church is a kingdom, and Christ rules over the people. So the first thing we have to do is we answer to him. And that's one of the things we've got to always keep in mind and always remember, that it's kind of like whenever I was teaching the last time and Jesus was on the cross and he said, why have you forsaken me? But then he said to his Father, but then he turns around and says, not my will, but thy will be done. So we've got to always remember, we've got to put Christ, the Lord, first. What they want us to do is what, and I say they, you know how the line goes, but Christ is ruling over us, but their will is what we need to follow and not our own, and we've got to learn from examples, and we have to do a good job of leading and teaching and trying to install the loyalty that was given to us, trying to teach and make other people aware of, and our children, our families, of what we know and what I say believe, but really it's more in depth than believe. I mean, I think it's right, I believe you, and then there's a conviction with your belief that's, I give all I have and I believe everything wholeheartedly without any shadow of a doubt in my mind. Does anybody have any thoughts or comments? I need a little help.
But you're right on the Israelites and how it relates to, we tend to, if we don't watch it, we'll be just like the Israelites. We'll do things our own way until we get in the ditch. And then Lord, help me out of the ditch, and it'll keep going around and around. And the problem with it is, there's many problems that we have. I can speak for myself. I don't listen to Christ or God. I listen to myself. And then there's also the times where we may listen to a well-known preacher, brother, elder in the church, and we tend to put them on the pedestal, and that's no better. It didn't really matter if the Israelites were following Moses. It didn't really matter if they're following Joshua or they're following King David. They tend to always end up in this ditch, because they weren't doing what God wanted them to do. They would tend to do what they wanted to do or follow whoever sounded more like what they wanted to do in their own heart. And that's what we have to really try and realize today is that, our leader is Christ. And God sent him, if you don't get the words, then look at the example. He led by example, and we're supposed to, many times I find myself going to the scriptures and trying to find a way around something. Now I'm already in the ditch right then. I just don't know it yet. And I'm looking at the scripture and I think, well, this is really the way what it says here, and and you just, all you have to do is say, wait a minute. Christ is the example. What would he do? And it's usually pretty clear. And I hate to be that simplistic about it, but really and truly, God didn't make it difficult. Matter of fact, he did everything he could to make it simple. You don't want to be standing before him come Judgment Day and actually say to him, you didn't make it clear, because he really has made it as clear as he can. And the fact of the matter is the examples in the Old Testament are there for us to look and see how people messed up. And the Israelites did it many, 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 many times. I mean, they just didn't do it once or twice. I mean, they repeatedly did the same thing wrong over and over. And I see, I see so much of it today in my life and in the world and in the United States, wherever you want to look. I mean, it's just a lot of times people are just it doesn't take long. You just look at a group of people and say, well, really, what are they after? You can look at the group that that are pro-choice, and they're after this, and you can look at that group of people and they're after that. And who do they put up as their leader? And and it's never God, it's never Christ, unless they're using a lie to try and twist it around. And you look at what they want, and then you see who their leaders are, and you see what they're trying to accomplish and how they're trying to accomplish it. More lies, Now there's got to be a certain amount of truth in there to get you to digest it. They'll give you a little bit of the truth, and then here comes the lie in with it. And change the names of things so that it makes it sound more appealing. We all are getting desynthesized to it too. I for one am getting desynthesized to it. The fact that well, here it goes again. I see this group of people and they're doing that. Not only paying attention anymore, but they're leading thousands and thousands and thousands of people down this path of a lie. To pretty soon they're rewriting history. This is what we think is right. No, it's not.
Right.
But they make people believe it, and then they're gone. And it's hard to reach them because they haven't heard the truth, and they haven't seen, maybe they aren't seeing people living the truth like we should.
Right. So, and that's all good points. And I've pretty well covered everything that I've got. Jeremy, you got something?
I think one of the big lessons or takeaways as you look at this lesson is what Barry was alluding to, is leadership. And I think we mentioned it some earlier. And the lessons that bring this forth, and I was in the back for a minute very long, so I don't know if you touched on this or not, but you look at the very beginning, they served the Lord all the days of Joshua, and all the days of the elders who outlived Joshua, and who had seen the great works and so forth. So after Joshua left, there were others to carry it on. The problem arose whenever there weren't others to carry it on.
Right.
Now, whose shoulders that fall on? Well, the ones who came before. And the point is, whose job is it to train up the next elders?
Right.
And I say that in this context, but also in the context of now. Who, if you don't start now training up who's going to lead the church 20 years from now, 20 years from now will come and the church crumbles around you.
Right. Everybody's just doing what you think is right.
A local congregation or an area, or the church will endure forever. But if you don't, it is. Maybe it was the elders here that came after Joshua who didn't prepare for the ones that come after them.
Right. And that's. Oh, I'm sorry.
And I think that's one of the big takeaways that you get here is, we need to constantly be preparing for the future of the church.
That's right, and that's what I was actually, whenever I try to finish a lesson, I always try to tell you what I took away from it, and a point to remember, and that's what I was going to say, is that you got to remember it's our responsibility to not let that happen. We need to, like you're saying, train up. We need to teach our children, or even just the youth, because I know I didn't go to church with a parent. I walked. I just decided I wanted to go, and I walked to church. So I looked at other people, and they kind of took me under their wing as well and tried to educate me. And still to this day, Steve and Tammy do a good job of educating me of what it's like to have a family and to be a parent, because I didn't grow up the same way as me and Candace did. So I always remember it's your job. It's not somebody else's job. It's your job, whether it's your family or whether it's a friend or whether it's just somebody that's walked in this building and we need to go and introduce ourselves and, convince them to keep coming back and educate them and to lead them. And so this world itself doesn't keep falling in that same bad cycle. Anybody got anything else? Well, if not, I'm sorry, but I'm done. It's the shortest lesson maybe ever, but thank you for attending today.